Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Coaxum Report. I am Terry Coaxum, and today I have the honor and pleasure to be joined by Dr. Karen Green, a political strategist, a humanitarian, my sister from another mister. It is truly a pleasure. How are you, Dr. Karen Green?
I'm good, my sister. It's first of all, let me just thank you for inviting me here and congratulations on a well-deserved programming and broadcasting. I know we're all gonna be blessed with having you here. So thank you for having me as well. I'm
Thank
good.
you so much.
I'm
Thank you
good.
so much. So Karen is out of Florida, but Karen is all things. I mean, I had the phenomenal pleasure of meeting Karen when she was with Hillary Clinton, actually, and she was running. What was the program that you were running out of the Virgin Islands?
It
You
was
were.
actually leading into our presidential campaigns,
That's
into our
right.
conferences and otherwise. Yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah.
so Dr. Karen Green is also a political strategist, and she is a Democrat from the Democratic Party of Florida. She's the vice chair of the
Amen.
Florida Democratic Party, and so she has some phenomenal connections, and it is truly a pleasure to have her on today. So the Coxum Report, as we know, is about really just giving our small business a venue to come to every Wednesday to have an opportunity to get some nuggets about how to grow your business. And so, Dr. Karen Green, today I just want you to give us a quick, update on what you're doing. And then we're going to jump right into the show because Florida is different.
It really is. And I
It
think
is
folks need to
phenomenal.
understand too, when I met you, you were in fact the liaison, the director of the SBA for the territories, leading in the
Yes.
SBA, leading for small businesses. And you've
Yep.
continued to do this as a consultant, I know, blessing us, so many of us. You're
Absolutely.
right.
I was a regional advocate for Small Business Administration, and I
Yes, you
covered the
were.
Virgin Islands. I also covered at that time, I was covering Puerto Rico, New
Wonderful.
York, and New Jersey as well. And so it was a great pleasure. It was also a great pleasure coming out to the Democratic National Convention and getting an opportunity to meet with you and
Yes.
your quote unquote squad.
Yeah, we've crossed paths and we continue to do our role in making sure people like us get included in what's economic
Absolutely.
benefit.
Absolutely. And we're going to definitely talk about including us and how we can be included more, especially with contracting opportunities, especially, I want to say post pandemic, right? Pre
Mhm.
pandemic, post pandemic now, right? We want to talk about how we can help our small businesses better, how we can help them out in Florida, how we can help them here in New York and New Jersey, the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, or wherever our paths cross. So, want to just give you an opportunity to talk about that as a business owner as well. Dr. Karen Green is also a business owner. And so some of the barriers that most of us face, during the COVID pandemic when it was in high gear, Dr. Karen Green can talk about some of the encounters she had with small businesses out in Florida and some of the best practices and some of the big ideas that came about as a result of it. Dr. Green?
So one of the phenomenal things that happened was this introduction on this program when we were informing folks about the opportunities for the Build Back Better initiative and of
Yes.
course the rescue plan. And
Hmm.
so a lot of folks, minorities, particularly Black and Brown people, who for a lot of times were not included, the this administration went ahead to create different minority-based priorities. And
Hmm.
it was one of those where so many women, as you know, many of us are business owners. Many of us have been doing projects not just in business, but also as nonprofit organizations. And that was also another great part of this economic well build back initiative
Hmm.
that so many of us got to be a part of. Now we
Absolutely.
also know that unfortunately there were some folks who didn't go about it the right way, and as a result of that, so many others were disenfranchised. And it continues to be so. There are a lot of folks who still were not able to because of not having the proper prerequisites. They were denied, and then the application for reconsiderations continue. So I think because of some of the unfair practices, in all
Hmm.
fairness, the SBA had a real task of validating that what was real. And so as a result, many people to date, did not secure those grants and those loans.
And
Um,
that was really unfortunate, Dr. Green, because Build Back Better was about giving them an even playing field.
Yeah.
And so, unfortunately, because some of our businesses did not have the technical support before COVID, um, and because they were working so hard to kind of stay in business, they didn't put their paperwork, so to speak, in order. So, the taxes were an issue, both your personal and your business tax, right? There were several other considerations that were taken into place. And like you said, they were disenfranchised and didn't get an opportunity to take advantage of those loans that actually turned into forgiveness grants. And on the marketplace, and as you indicated before here, so we're on the marketplace, Kalaloo Radio, Tempo, and Bloomberg. The marketplace gave an opportunity for some of those businesses because we actually had a financial institution involved that came on board, and you and I had the opportunity to kind of share some of the experiences, and small businesses were able to apply on the marketplace for the PPP loan,
Yes.
forgiveness loan, and that gave some an opportunity to apply for those funds, but they were, like you said, there were a lot that did not. And so what I'm encouraging a small business that did not get an opportunity to apply for some of the small business monies that was a part of the Build Back Better program, I'm going to encourage them to seek out their chambers, the CDFIs, which was the community development financial institutions. We had the pleasure, Dr. Green, last week we had Senator Kevin Parker on, and he talked about some of the access to capital, because that's what we're starting off again. This is a major barrier for our small
It
businesses,
is. It
access
is.
to capital. And
Right.
even though we didn't start off that way, it always seems to lean in on how do we access capital better. And so one of the things that he encouraged our small business to do was, for the small businesses, to first start with their banks, who they're banking with. And he talked about the smaller institutions, like the credit unions, like the CDFIs, revolving credit funds, were more apt to give loans to those small business. And so we're going to back it up a little bit, because you touched on something that's so important, Dr. Green, and that is making sure that you're having that our businesses are actually understanding the business part of business. And that business part was just what you said:
Yeah.
having your taxes in order, having a
Right.
business plan, your
Right.
capability statement. Just because you're able to bake cookies don't mean you should be a baker, right? There's so many different layers to this, Dr. Green. And so you open up a big can here for us to kind of really dive in deep, and give some resources, some nuggets, because we're not just going to bring barriers on a Coaxum report, right? We're going to also come up with some solutions. And so what is Florida doing to kind of address some of those issues and concerns, the small
So
business?
as you know, Florida is a very unique place
Yep,
for obvious
very
reasons.
different.
I'm going to steer from the politics and at this point, but Florida has really, as you said, post-pandemic, it's horrible. It's meaning that we were coming back, but the restrictions that we faced, for one, the fact that we don't have medical insurance here created even more of a problem for some of the employers who
Okay.
provided that service for so many people here. That we don't have a Medicaid expansion. So obviously, post-pandemic, folks who were affected by COVID now have pre-existing conditions. With the economic impact of that, people being a primary bread owner, income owners, we didn't have that. So we
So
went
we're
through
gonna
closing
pause. We're
time.
gonna pause right there, because they're giving us our first break. We're gonna have a break, and we're gonna come back, and we're gonna talk
Okay,
about,
sure.
because that's a huge barrier for our small business. So we're gonna take a break right now, Dr. Green, and we're gonna come back and get more into what's going on in Florida, and then
Mm-hmm.
we'll talk about some of the solutions moving
Sure.
forward that you guys are working on bringing about.
Will
Thank you
do.
so much, Dr. Green. Let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Sure.
I'm Charles Meriday, and I'm in the restaurant business. In my 20 years as a chef and restaurant owner, I've been able to work and eat in some of the great kitchens around the globe. There's a whole side of the restaurant that most people will never get to see. So now, I want to take you to the back of the house, into kitchens of some of the best chefs in the world. Along the way, I'll share some of my own tips and recipes so you can cook like a pro too. So join me in the back of the house for a whole new perspective on cooking and food. Order in. Roger. Serve it, please.
Buona Pasqua.
I'm glad that you came, please.
Hello and welcome back to the Coaxum Report. We're on with Dr. Karen Green, and we're just talking about healthcare and how essential it is for our small business, how essential it is for our workers in the state of Florida. We're just going to dive a little more into that. Dr. Green was giving us some of the barriers to access to affordable healthcare out in Florida. So let's talk a little bit more about that, Dr. Green.
Sure. And so everything is politics, as we said before. I try not to get into it here because of the economic piece of it, but it's fair to say that Florida has a very unusual challenge because we still don't have the option of folks who don't have employee benefits of healthcare. During a crisis, they didn't have access to Medicaid either because of the governor's choice not to expand the Medicaid for residents. What we've done here is what has happened, just on a point you just mentioned, is that from this mass unemployment or better yet, forced economic hardship, a lot of folks became very innovative. For example, folks, Florida here has Disney being one of the largest employees in the state.
That's right.
Lots of folks lost jobs there.
That's
and
right.
of course, their unemployment benefits were delayed, unlike other states. And what I've seen within the last couple of months is that so many of these employees who were displaced are now business owners, taking their skill of culinary practices and or even transportation. One of the things we learned on this marketplace program was that a lot of people who were applying for loans didn't understand that as a private person, you were a company if you were doing something, even as a barber or a taxi driver, that there are opportunities through the SBA for sole proprietors who benefited from that same loan or grants and or forgiveness during that time.
That's right.
So where are we now? Another great thing about Florida is that we are tropically at a good place. We have great weather here, and as a result, our agricultural benefits are there. We can see from the Build Back Better initiative, the infrastructure piece, where we're now looking at having contractors, the airports would be expanded, or railroads, or high speed. We're looking at building bridges and transportation across the state. So this would create more jobs. And I'm hoping to, based on what I'm seeing, coming out of the negotiations and the presentations from the administration, that we will have minority groups, small business contractors who will now have a piece to be able to, have their own companies. So as bad as COVID was, what COVID did for many of us is created the opportunity of innovation. And as the previous program spoke about, home businesses, you now had an opportunity not just to work from home, but to find things that you could have done that was income driven.
That's right.
Where we are. So yeah, it's been a real challenge. But out of a very bad situation, you know how faithful I am with my practice of faith, that
Right.
there, out of every devastating thing with hope, there has been some real blessings.
So this is really good news. And we talked about this when we were in the marketplace before with obstacles or opportunities, right? And so
Mhm.
these opportunities came out of individuals being laid off and finding other ways to make an income. And so that's really
Mhm.
good for Florida because now
Mhm.
that means, people are now going to be able to have an income, a living wage income, where they can be able to do things in the state of Florida and expand and grow. And so innovation is, it truly is great to hear that information.
It really is.
Okay,
I
and
mean,
how do we support them? How do we support them here in the marketplace? I know we have opportunities where they can come onto the marketplace and they can sell whatever widgets they need. Coming onto the Coaxum report each week, we'll be able to share the testimonials of some of these
Mhm.
individuals and
Mhm.
some of the challenges that you just talked about. But what are some other ways? We talked about access to capital
Mhm.
and supporting them there through our chambers, through our
Mhm.
CDFIs, through our
Mhm.
state economic development corporations out in Florida as well as here in New York. What are some other things that we can do to support this innovation? And then we're going to get into talking about the NWBEs and some of the contracting opportunities
Right.
that's coming out of that infrastructure bill.
Right.
That's going to be huge. Now, we're talking billions.
Mhm.
So we need to make
Mhm.
sure that individuals that are listening today are ready so they don't have to get ready to go after some of those contracting opportunities. How do we support
So
them?
one of the areas where I think we are looking to, first and foremost, we're going to have to do some education. We're going to have to be training people in
Right.
skill careers.
Okay.
And so I think a role that that we could play, organizations such as the nonprofits and or the community technical institutions, we
Hmm.
need to be training folks.
Okay.
We now know that within the construction industry is going to be one of the most advanced or most booming within the next decade, as it
Okay.
relates to a certain skill sets. I was told not too long ago at a community college that I attended, I was speaking at, is that welders are now one of the highest speed careers in.
Really?
So yeah,
Okay.
so it's important to recognize that not just for community colleges for
For
skill
trade.
training, but
Yeah.
we're going to have to look at retraining not just for academia but now for skill sets as it relates to the build back to the infrastructure piece. So
That's really interesting, Dr. Green. So I don't know. I think I mentioned this to you. I was raised in South Carolina,
yes.
and when I was in high school, they actually had trade programs in your high school, and so there
Mhm.
were welders, there were carpenters right in our
Mhm.
high school.
Mhm.
You were able to learn auto mechanics right in your
Mhm.
high school, welding in
Mhm.
your high school.
Mhm.
And so, do you foresee some of that coming back into our schools
Well,
to
I hope
address
so.
this
I hope
shortage?
so.
Yeah, yeah.
As you know, I'm from the islands. I'm Jamaican, and our curriculum also provided an academic, but also a technical training. So
Hmm.
there was a
That's right.
technical high school opportunity where teachers would be able to identify by testing where this child's skills and abilities were.
Right.
And so, like you mentioned in the South, I don't know what happened with our curriculum. Everybody was driven to academia when in reality, we needed the plumbers, we needed the
That's
builders, we
right.
needed the air conditioners. So I think I now see this almost an evolution
Hmm.
of development
That's
that
right.
would create that need within this infrastructure piece. The reality is we have fallen bridges. We
That's
have
right.
airports
That's
with
right.
awkward exits and entries. And
Hmm.
in a time where national security is relevant, infrastructure, construction, and transportation is all intertwined. So I believe, and another wonderful thing that really amazed me is I sat in a class of technical students, and Terry, the first time ever where where we now had a gender neutrality, where there was just as many women sitting
Wow.
in a class of technical students than it was, decades ago. So
Wow. That's
I
amazing.
think that's another great part. I also had the opportunity of sitting in on one of the White House briefings recently, where we were talking about small business and the development and how the SBA was playing a role in looking at these, creating these opportunities cells almost, where
Mm.
minorities, women, small, whatever the priority, the criteria was, that was also available. So
Oh, that's
I would
awesome.
be, here in Florida, we're going to be going, making sure that as a Black woman business owner, who is
That's
also
right.
the head of a nonprofit, we're going to take our time to make sure that we do some education, do
Hmm.
some recommendations,
That's
and
right.
see how best we could look to find your help in
That's right.
identifying the financial or economic leads into making sure these organizations have the right funding.
Awesome. I mean, this is really good news. I'm sitting here smiling from ear to ear because this
Mhm.
is something that we've been talking about, bridging the skill set. We've been talking about this. I teach at Medgar Evers College,
Mhm.
and we just my colleague and I just wrote an article on
Mhm.
bridging the
Mhm.
skill set. And so
Mhm.
this is that opportunity to do that, especially with the transportation dollars coming down. It's an opportunity for us to kind of rethink, rethink the economy, rethink our workspace. Just before you came on, I was listening to the other broadcast, the alert report, and she was talking about real estate and how individuals are not going back to that traditional workspace. They're actually starting their business or working from home.
Mhm.
And so that means that the market is opening up, right? And so people are no longer, if you have a house with a backyard, you don't want to go back to a condo and live in the city. You're going to want to purchase some property where you're able to expand your business there, grow your business there. So that's an opportunity. Now I'm hearing about, the infrastructure dollars coming down in transportation, construction, and transportation, construction, and the building trades
Mhm.
being a
Mhm.
part of that
Mhm.
conversation.
Mhm.
And it's also good to know that the Small Business Administration, which I used to work at, is
Mhm.
thinking about some of this technical support, having these technical trainings. And I envision some of that even coming from our economic development hubs in our different states and our cities, to
Mhm.
make sure
Mhm.
that individuals are getting those, really honing in on their skill sets and getting prepared to go out and do their business. And so this is good. This is good stuff. Dr. Green, thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing. So one of the things that I hope our listeners will get from this conversation, Dr. Green. One, we're welcoming them to the marketplace, to Callaloo Radio, Temple, and Bloomberg. But we're also talking about barriers, and we're giving some solutions and some nuggets. And so for individuals that are listening today that are out in the Florida area or even in our city here in New York, because transportation dollars are coming down here too, think about some of these building trades, think about some of these
Mhm.
skill sets. If we have
Mhm.
educators that are listening like myself,
Mhm.
thinking about
Mhm.
how to bridge that gap. How
Mhm.
do we step in
Mhm.
and make sure that these individuals are prepared so they're ready, so they don't have
Mhm.
to get ready when the opportunities are made available to them. Thank you so much for sharing that
Mhm.
with us,
Mhm.
Dr. Green. So Dr. Green, we're gonna take another little short break and then we're gonna come back. I'm super excited to kind of really get into some of those contracting dollars coming down through Build Back Better,
Mhm.
and offering some nuggets on
Mhm.
how we can make sure that the new business that we just talked about in Florida are ready for some of those dollars to come into their pockets. Thank you so much, Dr. Green.
You're welcome.
I'm setting an example for my kids.
I got me a side hustle.
I have more control of my destiny.
I need multiple streams of income.
It's hard work, but I'm working for me.
A job is cool, but I need more.
It's all about being self-employed. You're tuned into the world of Self-Employed and Rising with Art Taylor, where we bring you the amazing stories of people who are challenging the odds and following their dreams of self-employment. Learn from their successes and be inspired. Hear creative ideas for your business and find tips to take your hustle to another level.
Style takes too long. I can't fit anything. I have nothing in this closet. Oh, I'll just stay home. I need to purge my closet. Oh, but not that dress. Yo, Taylor here. If you ever thought to say one of these phrases, then this show is for you. Join me at the Style Table, where we'll have candid and fun conversations about real women's style issues and wardrobe dilemmas. We will discuss solutions and ideas that will give you a big sigh of relief. You'll learn ways to save money, make money, and enrich the lives of others with the clothes in your closet. We're going to take the stress out of your style.
Welcome back to our TV, to the Coaxum Report. I am on live with Dr. Karen Green, who is sharing
My
some
sister.
phenomenal information about some of the great, some of the great projects that are going to be taking place, hopefully, from the infrastructure dollars that are coming down. So she just talked about these opportunities, these
Mhm.
obstacles, bringing about new opportunities for the state of Florida. So thank you so much for sharing that, Dr. Green. I'm so excited.
I fail to remember that there are a few things happening. Florida, we all know, is just this gateway to the world, to
Mhm.
South and Central America, and basically it's the main port of what we now know to be the most diverse state, as it was in your state, New York.
That's right.
So there's some things happening here. We have a few things happening. One is that here in Florida, we have, as you all know, NASA is over there in Brevard County. We know
Hmm.
that based on what we're told, that Virgin Atlantic was going to be doing this new transportation, high tech transport, new to our country and to our state. We have Port Canaveral, which is one of the most modern ports, also in the state of Florida. And then we
Hmm.
also have, as I said before, this mass industry of tourism. So from this comes all the things that we're talking about. We have all
That's
this
right.
mass land, there's agriculture. I think what I recommend today is our listeners should recognize or information or support factors,
Yeah,
not only from the federal government, but also your municipal districts, your counties,
that's
that
right.
there's also funding. And Terry, that there was in fact emergency funding for a lot of companies who just didn't tap into those
That's right.
within their local counties. So I suggest that we still go back and talk to our county commissioners, see what's available through the mayor's office,
That's
and
right.
get familiar with your municipal leaders. Also, as state representatives, the state of Florida also has programs that I think would still be around. So get to know your elected.
That's right.
Recognize your county, your municipal leaders, your mayor's office, your county commissioners, as well as your state representatives in the House of whichever state you're
Alert
in.
from device
These
enrollment.
programs would also be available. Um, Also, another area where your main information come from the federal government is your congressional delegates.
That's right.
Your congressman or woman, your congressperson representative in your district, their office of engagement and outreach does have and provide you with up-to-date information, not just on available funding, but also grants and opportunities,
That's
and
right.
also to provide you with any kind of updates that will be coming from the federal government. So those are some real sources of information, and for continuing to expand this Build Back Better initiative, I think we should direct folks to there. And also don't forget that the website for the SBA is
That's right.
almost supposed to be like your journal. Anyone who's in business or who has any intentions of going into business, the website for the SBA has become very friendly.
Hmm.
Um,
Yes.
I'm saying that
Yes.
I'm saying that because
SBA.gov.
yes, right. So it's a good place to go see what's there and see what possibilities or opportunities are still available to
Right.
apply for.
Absolutely. And then to get support as well. One of the things you mentioned, which is really, really important, is, calling up our elected leaders, tagging them into any of the issues and concerns that you have, the municipal, the county leaders, the city leaders, the executive branch, making sure that they understand what's going on, because they'll be able to provide those resources. And that's an
Correct.
excellent source. Here in New
Correct.
York, New Jersey, and Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands as well, we're also doing a lot of tagging in our elected leaders. Our elected leaders are now doing skill set training.
Mhm,
My
mhm,
congresswoman and our
mhm,
friend, Congresswoman Yvette D. Clark,
mhm,
and Congressman Hakeem
mhm,
Jeffries, they just did a resume building
mhm,
training. And in that resume building training, they also brought in LinkedIn. So, as you
mhm,
know, a lot of us now, when we're
mhm,
looking for opportunities, we're placing
mhm,
our stuff and our
mhm,
information up on LinkedIn. And so they had LinkedIn come in and kind of walk their constituents through
mhm,
how to really put up a LinkedIn
mhm.
page that are getting you a second look. Right.
Yes.
So those are all
Yeah.
skill set training. So tagging in our elected official is very
Mhm,
important. Another elected official that is doing some phenomenal work and We saw that in a lot of the hearings, and that's Representative Stacey Plaskett out
Oh,
in
yes.
the U.S. Virgin
Oh,
Islands.
yes.
She's doing some
Yes.
phenomenal things there. So
Yes.
tagging in those elected officials, making sure that they understand, some of the barriers, because they'll have a lot of the best practices and big ideas and resources
Correct.
that they can
Correct.
provide to
And
our community. So
and,
that
and most and the election the representatives you mentioned, there is also the familiarity of your district.
that's
And
right.
here in the state of Florida, as I mentioned, agriculture is a big part of or ways and means.
That's
And
right.
so Congressman Darren Soto, has been really, really engaged in making sure that these small agricultural zones, because
Mhm.
our farmers, I had an experience 2 weeks ago where in my own backyard, the pawpaw trees were all burnt. And with that,
Really?
what happens is one night of a frost in the state of Florida ruins so many lives. And
Wow.
so we talk about, the agricultural precautions, the repercussions of just a one night freeze, losing our oranges or strawberries, what
Mhm.
happens to these crops. And
That's
so
right.
there has to be those kind of advanced notices and precautions, and in some cases recovery for these lost crops and staffing. So it's a lot to be done. We have also functioning in our state. There's so many congressional delegates we could tap before we start calling names.
That's
But
right.
the role we're getting to is that there is a need for
That's right.
engagement, because if they don't get it to the heads, they wouldn't know. There was something that
Absolutely.
you touched on about housing.
Absolutely.
Now, the previous program I overheard, it was a really very in depth and very concerning. What we have happening now is that houses are sold so fast that these days home ownership is becoming almost, it's not just getting the funds, it's now finding the house. Because houses are, here in the state of Florida, I know there are a lot of realtors who listen in here. You can hardly find a house to buy because the moment they hit the market, they're sold.
Wow.
That's because, it's really happening. And the good thing is, we still see, within the last couple of months,
Mhm.
we now see construction again starting to boom. But it's been a real challenge for us in the state of Florida because of people migrating to Florida.
Mhm.
Now the housing market is really, really at a peak.
Really
So,
interesting. Really.
yeah,
Now, is there property available? So is that a void that can be filled? We can have construction, more construction in the state of Florida, or is
so
it both? It's a lack of both,
I think it's both. One of the focuses I've been tuning into is
Mhm.
basically looking into how we go about providing affordable housing.
Ah,
Because these houses that
always here in New York and New Jersey,
oh my
affordable
sister,
housing is always at the top of the mind.
yeah,
Yep.
it really is. It's a
Yep.
priority here because the houses that are being built are in the upper 400,000s. And the average homeowner, as you know, with the qualifications of finding the budget, the finances to find a home that size, that price is not necessarily for people who are working at a low income. So we're going to have to find ways and means of
Mhm.
providing and building low income housing. I think this is also a great opportunity for small business to come together almost as let's see how we can pull this off. I know there are a lot of minority women who are looking into building and construction. And I think these are some of the areas where I think we should now apply the losses we've had, the devastation of COVID, to lead us to some new innovation and basically prosperity, for a better sense.
Absolutely. And on that note, we're going to take a little break and we're going to come back and we're going to dig a little more into affordable housing. We've touched a lot in this segment. We've
Yes,
talked
right.
about, affordable housing. We've talked about the trades. We've talked about equity in healthcare, right? And so we're going to come back and dig a little more into affordable housing and we're going to offer some more nuggets and solutions. So
Sure.
thank you, Dr. Green. Thank you. We're going to take a short break.
Time. It has a different meaning in the U.S. Virgin Islands. It goes backwards, forwards, it stops. St. Croix is rooted in history. So much of it still remains untouched.
I remember running on these streets as a kid. This shop was right down there. It opened the same year I was born. This is where the original Crucian hook was born. It's the symbol of these islands. And I wanted to have my hands in that very same history. I want to be able to pass it down to my family while still putting a new spin on it.
The U.S. Virgin Islands, we have an amazing culture that developed over time from all over the world.
St. John feels so untouched. Being underwater is like another world. There's no worries, there's no stress. I can just escape. This is my happy place. My passion for scuba diving came at just being fascinated with the water and wanting to be a mermaid. And this is the closest thing I can get to achieving mermaid status. Canadians just love being outdoorsy. We live for adventure, so we love anything hiking, being on the water, diving, snorkeling, and St. John has it all.
It's like some spirit is protecting the island and keeping them raw. The Makujumbi watches over the island. From up there, they keep the evil spirits away. The nightlife in St. Thomas is absolutely amazing. There's always something going on. Everyone comes together to dance and catch a vibe. We're always celebrating. We celebrate freedom, culture, the food, the smell, the music. It's always a celebration. The people here are probably the most priceless thing because they keep the culture going. There's so many different influences on these islands. Food from all kind of countries coming together in new dishes. All of us came from somewhere, but all of we call this home. The VI is the new melting pot. This is where the past and the future comes together.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the launch of the new MTV Caribbean channel. What's the name? What's the name? Let's go.
And that's why tempo is so so important and sort of on point, because there's a tempo to everything that we do in the Caribbean. You know what I'm saying? It's a heartbeat.
We have our whole channel, man. The Caribbean is so diverse.
And for them to recognize that and to launch a channel for that, that is totally amazing.
I started to think about all of that, and I was like, wow. I said, well, wait a minute. These are all the things that make great television.
Watch on Tempo.
Welcome back. Welcome back to our TV. You're listening now to the Coaxum Report. This is a part of Callaloo Network, Bloomberg, and the Marketplace. So welcome back. I'm talking now to a phenomenal sister who's doing some amazing things in our space here. We're talking to her. She's down in Florida. Her name is Dr. Karen Green. And we've touched on a lot of great things today, in addition to talking about some of the barriers for our small business that are listening. We gave some nuggets on some access to capital. And in addition to that being one of the biggest barriers, we talked about some of the other resources that are available in the state of Florida, and of course here in New York, New Jersey, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. And that is making sure that we're tapping our elected officials, our municipal officials, our county officials. So in addition to Dr. Green telling us about some of the leaders that have resources are available, we talked about the Small Business Administration, and she also assured us that we now have a more user-friendly platform for SBA, for our businesses to go on. And so that is great information. And from the barriers and the access to capital, Dr. Green also brought up some phenomenal opportunities in this space as far as the trades. And so Dr. Green talked about, us having these opportunities in construction and in transportation. We talked about Build Back Better and the dollars that are coming down in the billions that are available. But more importantly, we talked about the diversity of Florida.
That's right.
And all of the obstacles, and with the obstacles, these opportunities that came about. So we have a whole array of new business that resulted from the pandemic. There are smaller businesses that are now in the marketplace. And so, hopefully they're listening to us today. They will hear about some of the opportunities in all of the trades and opportunities and access to capital resources that are available to them. And just before we went on break, Dr. Karen Green gave us one more nugget, and that is affordable housing.
So what was interesting, I was actually transported to the U.S. Virgin Islands or other home just now with those beautiful pictures.
Right.
One of the things one of the things I saw that reminded me of just how close and interconnected we are was, I remember, you and I know that in St. Croix, the fiber optics, that is the technology of that.
That's right.
But it's like beyond anywhere else in the world. And here in the state of Florida and in the Caribbean and across the globe, we're at a place now where we're looking at alternative energy, clean energy.
That's right.
We're looking at solar energy as option. And I think even this morning I was hearing that the car manufacturers are moving now towards away from fuel into batteries. So, we're really at a turning point in our lives in this generation to see what other new and innovative things will come about.
Absolutely.
I was touching on the point of housing, and this is a major concern. For many years, decades, people would see Florida either for vacation homes or retirement state, or folks who just came here to go to school because it's the southern state, it's close to the Caribbean or from everywhere else. And you just come here, you love the weather, you stay.
Right.
And there was a time when it was doable. But Florida is still one of the states that still has not had our minimum wage is still not $15 yet. We fought for that. We have one of the lowest minimum wages in the country. We're still, we have gone through legislative ambitious moves and still pushing to have that. It's not going to be automatic. And so we still have one of the lowest income wages in the country. We also have a situation where housing, because of the South, a lot of real estate was owned by the people who used to own us too.
That's right. That's right.
And so let us just be clear. It's that month when we still have to think back of where we are today, how far we've come, just how we have basically, shown the world that we were who we had long been, brilliant, wise, and innovative, and able to do things, right?
That's right.
So now we're at a place where how do we get affordable housing? It is literally on the minds and the mouths of every elected official. I know that a lot of the housing decisions come through our local Florida House as it relates to how this is distributed, or how it's where it basically fits into the demographic of what we just did with the census. So everything is intertwined. Everything is here where housing is critically needed. We see that, as I said earlier, there are certain places in the country where we see real estate. We hear of housing, we hear of migration, we hear of new residents moving in. But the folks who are moving in, particularly now in Florida, are folks who I believe will be able to afford a house that is over $300,000. The folks who live here who've been earning under minimum wage, trying families, low income families, middle class families, but because they've had all the expenses, they're not able to afford those large homes, or they did not have the generational wealth that we've all preached about and continue to preach about in our in our time.
That's right.
So what do we do with this?
That's right.
Unlike New York, where housing, I believe housing is better handled. This is my opinion in New York than it is here. I strongly believe that this is one of the tasks that our elected need to be put a task with, to make sure that people in their districts and their constituencies don't have those challenges.
That's right.
We still have the homeless folks that are down there near the Greyhound bus stops, on the bridges. In a modern world that is so wealthy, where there's so much development ongoing, we still have a crisis of people who are homeless. And it's not just homelessness because of what we know. We also know there's Florida has really had some hard times. When NASA closed, a lot of folks lost their jobs. People who had generations of employment working there in that part of the state. And what we've come to realize too is that from here, there was a major opioid addiction. And you and I know that this in some cases was all stress related and just desperation that led folks to these areas of cope, how they cope. But I think we really have our hands. COVID neutralized a lot of desperation and desperate people.
Right.
Because it wasn't just the homeless now who were struggling to have work and to find food. It was everybody who was unemployed for over 2 years.
That's right.
In a system that just couldn't afford. There were folks who couldn't even get unemployment.
Yes. And so I think you've touched on some major hot points. And so Mayor Adams, we have a new mayor here in New York City, Mayor Adams, only the second Black mayor in our great city. And he is tackling a lot of these issues. And so the housing blueprint was written and it's being rewritten for these times, for such a time as this, right? Because like you said, the pandemic has highlighted a lot of different issues, whether it's addiction, it's also mental illness. It's being highlighted dramatically here in New York. It's also issues with low income, not having the economic wages to really be able to live and to grow. And so that's why it's really important for us to talk about that and give some solutions. These are all the barriers, right? But a lot of what we've been talking about today is how to address that and giving people a living wage, giving people an opportunity to actually make the money that they can afford the housing, they can afford, equity in healthcare, because that was one of the issues that we started with, right? Not having that expansion, but making sure that the elected officials, like they are in Florida, are fighting for this for our constituents so that they'll be able to move forward and push the needle on this, because housing is essential. It is an essential right to all of us. And if you don't have good house, if you don't have a great place to stay, a good place to stay, you're not going to be healthy. And if you're not healthy, you're not going to be able to work. And if you're not able to work, you can't bring in an income. And all of these things are connected. I know Senator Parker talked about it being a nexus in our last conversation. And this is the point where we really have to, dig in hard and make sure that individuals' needs are being addressed in a big way. And that's what we're doing here on the Coaxum Report.
Yes.
Making sure that we're addressing the barriers, but also offering some of these solutions, Dr. Green.
I think one of the things that, yes, the Build Back initiative is powerful. It is one of the best things we've ever had for recovery.
That's
However,
right.
I think something needs to be done for housing.
Yes.
Almost like the GI Bill. It's not just free education we need to look at. We need to look at something comparable to Britain. What do we do for people with how people can afford or cannot afford to live? We need to have some, I believe, that housing should also be a human right.
That's right.
Not just healthcare. I
Right.
really feel that people should be able to, that no one should fear being being homeless.
That's right. That's right.
I really feel
Absolutely.
that in a society where, as you rightfully said, you cannot be healthy if you're living outdoors. You
That's right.
cannot be able to function without rest if you don't know where to rest.
That's
And
right.
so I think we need to look at some of the nations that are close to us, Britain, Canada. Look at the countries that have a housing program, some
Mhm.
kind of social services that provide some kind of benefit
Mhm.
for folks who are to prevent this kind of
Of a
devastation and
crisis. Right.
desperation.
Of a crisis.
So
But
I'm
it
hoping
also it
that
needs to be
something is tagged
that's right.
beyond this
Absolutely.
to counter that homeless piece.
Also, it should be holistic. It can't just be a
Yes,
cookie cutter approach. It
yes,
definitely has to
yes,
be holistic. It has to,
yes.
address all of the issues you talked about, the opioid crisis. We talked about, mental illness. We talked about all of these issues and concerns. And so you're absolutely right. Taking a look at that and making sure that we are moving the needle. We're tagging in our elected officials.
Mhm,
There are resources available here in New
mhm,
York for housing and
mhm,
homelessness and drug addiction and drug abuse in New
mhm.
Jersey, Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, and
Yes.
also in Florida. And so making sure that we are
Mhm.
definitely addressing all those things. It's I can't believe it's almost the hour that we're wrapping up. We've addressed a lot today. On the Coaxum Report. For those of you that are listening, this is the Coaxum Report, your place to be connected. We're here on our TV, the Callaloo Network, Tempo, and Bloomberg. You're in the marketplace, and so hopefully you tune in. You've gotten some of the nuggets that Dr. Green has made sure that she imparted upon us today. And we're going to wrap up. But before we do that, Dr. Green, I want you to kind of leave us with some parting remarks because we touched a lot. We're gonna have to bring you back for segment 2,
Well,
so
well,
we can really dive in. I mean, you gave us some great nuggets, and also addressed a lot of concerns and put people on notice that these are the things that we need to be doing to move our country forward holistically.
yeah,
Dr.
and
Green?
thank you again for the opportunity of being here. I must say that for everything that started this recovery and this restoration and this survival rule, I couldn't leave without saying to folks that this is going to be an election year.
Mm,
And a
okay.
year where the president of the United States, the Biden-Harris administration, to continue this role of recovery, will need to have people in the House, elected officials who will be able to support this continuing Build Back Better initiative. And so I'm suggesting
Absolutely.
to everyone today, I can't leave without saying, register to vote, exercise your constitutional right,
Absolutely.
seek to support the candidates who recognize and support your values. Of all the
Absolutely.
things we talked about holistically, your housing, your economics, build back, your trade, your skills. Let us seek out these elected officials who will be able to represent you and your everyday needs for
Absolutely.
yourself and your family.
Absolutely. And then I'm going to make sure you come back because we got a hard stop. And so I'm going to make sure you come back and talk about some of this. But thank you so much, Dr.
As
Green, for
always, Terry.
imparting all of this on us. And thank you guys for listening to the Coaxum Report. Join us again next week for some more nuggets. Have a good day.